Everything else God creates and says this is good. When he looks at humans and he says, let us create him, mankind, in our image, to be an icon of God. Or you have this moment where you're frustrated and your day's not going well and you're upset about something and you're like, oh, I can't believe the world's not fair, you know? And then you hear somebody else's problems and you're like, I'm a child, you know? We just have these moments where we feel small. And this is what the psalmist is getting at. When I consider the works of your hands, when I consider the vastness of space, all the things that are going on, I just feel so small. God, who am I that you would be considerate of me? Why do you care? So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be answering these questions. Who are we? Why are we here? And why does God care? Kicking off a brand new series today called Icon. This is what it looks like in Greek, actually. And, you can see the Greek in the bottom left. It's actually pronounced akon in Greek, so everybody say akon. But we're not going to say that for the whole series because that sounds weird. So we're just going to say this series is called Icon. And this series is called Icon. And throughout history, people have used icons. And you guys know what I'm talking about when I talk about icons, but there's these really famous icons in history. As a matter of fact, a part of the Greek Orthodox Church has been iconography. If you guys know what I'm talking about, I love these paintings. Here's one right here. This painting is called Anastasis. Have you guys seen this before? It's probably one of the most famous icons in Greek, the Greek Orthodox Church. And it's Jesus pulling people out of the grave, if you can see that. It's pretty cool. These are painted all over churches in the East, in the Greek Orthodox Church, and it's really interesting. You can trace these frescoes and trace these paintings to kind of see how theology and people thinking have developed over the years, but it's really fascinating. This was called Anastasis. We have icons in American history as well. Maybe you guys recognize this person, Honest Abe, right? Like Abe Lincoln. You see him and you know what he was about. You think about the founding of America. You think about the Emancipation Proclamation. You think about the struggle for freedom and all these things, and maybe even think about his assassination. But this is an American icon. I think more recently we have Jack Hughes, right? American. I mean, it's just such an iconic picture, right? Like teeth knocked out, blood running down his face, flag jumped. I mean, it's just like, this is America, you know? Like you think about the grit of the game, and maybe you're even thinking about the 1980 game, because the last time we won a gold medal, and how hockey single-handedly dismantled communism, you know? And so we just have all of these things, and so we have these pictures and these images. Maybe you've even seen this one before. This is just, you know what this is, right? Like you see this and it's like trash. And it's representative of trash. Like the picture itself is not, but it's just, you know, this is where you put stuff when you don't need it. It's where you put stuff on your desktop when you don't need it. Some of you guys that have 1 million icons on your desktop, you need to put some of those in the trash, you know. But here's what's interesting is that these are images that become representations of things bigger than themselves, right? These are images that come represent. I mean, you see a picture and there's a whole story, there's a whole history, there's a whole thing behind it. And those things kind of tell us something about something else, right? It's a picture that represents something that's so much bigger. It tells a bigger story. And it has a bigger image and a bigger meaning behind it. That's what an icon is. What's interesting is that icons, like I said, have been used all over history to represent other things. And at the time that Jesus was alive, this was especially true. And before Jesus, and if you were a king and you were traveling the world and you were conquering other kingdoms and conquering other peoples, what you would do is you would take a statue of yourself, an icon of yourself, and you would place it in that city that you conquered. And now all of a sudden, everybody in that city recognized that I am under foreign rule. I've been conquered, that this image, this representation of the king is now who we belong to. And so everywhere people went, if you were under, especially at the time of Jesus, if you were under Roman rule, there was statues of Caesar. There was coins minted with Caesar's face on it. Caesar was everywhere, was represented through icons, so that everybody knew who was in charge, and so that everybody knew who they were supposed to be loyal to. It was representation of a government, an ethic, a way of life. It was a representation of being conquered, of being under the fist of somebody else, perhaps. But these icons were representative of the king from which they came from. And we actually see this in Scripture. So one of my favorite stories in Scripture. It's so challenging. I think we've gotten it wrong for so long. But there's this story, and this is between, set it up for you, it's between Palm Sunday and Easter. All right, this is in Matthew's gospel. It's between Palm Sunday and Easter. Jesus has entered into the city triumphantly, right? Like he's come in, the people have shouted, Hosanna, and Jesus is popular and everybody's excited. And they're realizing that Jesus is bringing trouble, like the people in charge, Jesus is bringing trouble. He's kind of stirring something up. There's a tension that's building in the city. And so all through the week of Holy Week, of between Palm Sunday and Easter, they're trying to figure out ways to arrest Jesus. They're trying to figure out ways to trap him. They're trying to figure out ways to discredit him, because he's bringing something new. He's bringing something different. There's something happening around Jesus. And if they can arrest him or discredit him, this wave of tension, this rising tide of feelings and emotions would maybe settle down. And this is one of those instances in the story. So Jesus is, he's in the city, and this is how it starts. This is in Matthew chapter 22. If you brought a Bible with you this morning, you can turn there and you can read with me. So this is in 22:15, and it says, then the Pharisees went out and they laid plans to trap him, Jesus, in his words. They're trying to get him arrested. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Let me set this up for you. So we got the Pharisees, and all throughout the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus spars with the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the ultra-religious. They were the religious elite. They were Jewish nationalists. They were all like, hey, we've got to hold strong to Torah and beliefs and practice right. And they were kind of very, they were very strict about the rules. And so Jesus just spars with them over and over and over. So you have the Pharisees, the Jewish elite. And then it says that they sent some of their disciples and the Herodian disciples. The Herodians were another kind of political party at the time that Jesus was alive. The Herodians were kind of at some point in their history forced to be Jewish. So they were kind of Jewish in name only. They didn't practice. They weren't quite believers. And it was the Herodians that kind of had acquiesced to Rome. And it was the Herodians that were loyal to Rome and loyal to the government, right? And so they're sending these two people, these two factions, to ask questions to Jesus. And so here's what they ask in verse 15, or verse 16. Teacher, they said, we know you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar? So they're challenging Jesus. And here's how this goes. If Jesus were to say, yes, it is right to pay taxes to Caesar, the Pharisees could accuse Jesus of being a Roman sympathizer and therefore undermine his entire ministry. If Jesus says, no, it is not okay to pay taxes to Caesar, then the Herodians would arrest Jesus for being a traitor, for causing insurrection. They would call the IRS on Jesus. And so Jesus is in this interesting scenario here. He says, do we pay taxes to Caesar or not? I mean, the tension is thick. And Jesus responds and he says, but Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, whose portrait is this? And whose inscription? The Greek word is whose image. The Greek word is whose icon is this? So they hand Jesus a coin, and Jesus looks at the coin, and there is an icon of Caesar on the coin. This is significant in ways that we don't truly understand. Jesus is digging out something very, very deep here. Whose image is on the coin. Every Jewish person in the room, even the Herodians, would have known that Jews are not meant to carry around. They're not, you guys remember the 10 Commandments. It says, you shall not have idols. No Jewish person was to carry around or have any kind of idol that represented any other being. To have a coin that had Caesar's icon on it was a problem. And so now Jesus starts to spring the trap on them. And here's why. And I want to go back and I want to teach this to you because this is so significant for what we're talking about over the last couple of weeks. So this first time this idea shows up is in Genesis chapter 1, all the way back at the beginning of our Bibles. All the way back at the beginning of our Bibles in Genesis chapter 1, we get the creation narrative, and God creates and God breathes life into the world. You guys know that in the beginning, God created and the world was formless and void, and God brings order to chaos, and he does all the things in creation, and he breathes all this. He blesses life, and he blesses the world. Then on the last day of creation, God creates humans. You guys know the story. And in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26, here's how it reads. Then God said, let us make man in our what? Image. And in our likeness, let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creation that moves, all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves along the ground. You guys probably immediately know what I'm going to say, but God says, let us make mankind in our image. In the Hebrew Bible, this word is tselem, or tselem, but in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation, it's the Greek word icon. And we know this image, that icons are images that represent something bigger than themselves. When you look at creation, humans are the only one that are given special design. Everything else God creates and says this is good. When he looks at humans and he says, let us create him, mankind, in our image, to be an icon of God. Humans are to icon God. That's the point. That we represent something that's bigger and more powerful and more wonderful and more beautiful, and that's bigger than ourselves. We are an icon of God. We represent him in the world. That's what it means to be human.